Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we're taking a look back at week 4 of the Overwatch League. Quite a few big things happening this weekend. Of course, the final weekend of qualifiers for the Kickoff Clash tournament. So we know all 12 teams that will be participating in the tournament. 8 in the Western region, 4 in the Eastern region. So to show the picks from last week, all the games from last week, show you how I did, where it went well and where it did not. So you can see here, overall 15-5 on the weekend, 1-1 on big picks. It's really sad that 3 of those incorrect picks are all one team. Good old fusion moment. So anyway, let's get in there. Let's talk about what happened this past weekend and talk about where things are going into the Kickoff Clash. So Thursday were 3 APAC matches. The Seoul Dynasty were victorious over the Philadelphia Fusion. That was one of my big pick games from this past weekend. Pretty impressive win for the Dynasty. A lot of people have been worried, myself included, about potential inconsistencies from the Dynasty, but they look pretty strong overall. They don't look like the top team in the region or anything like that, but they still look pretty good, all things considered. So definitely a team that I'm interested in seeing what they are able to do when they get into the Kickoff Clash. Spoilers, they made the Kickoff Clash. I think they're an interesting team, and I think they'll be a fun one to kind of see how they actually do going forward, because they have been very up and down in the past. But this season they've been pretty consistent. They do have 2 losses. Spoiler alert, they lose a game on Sunday. But it'll be interesting to see how they do, because I think this Eastern region is fascinating. Obviously, no undefeated teams in the region. It's very, very close. A lot of the teams are very close together. So definitely one that I'm interested in kind of seeing where things go here in a few, over the course of the season. Definitely this first tournament will be very interesting because everyone's played each other already. And so there's not really like the mysteries in this second or in this Eastern region tournament that there are in the West, where in the West, for example, Dallas and San Francisco haven't played each other. So we're still trying to figure out who is going to be, the best team in that region when there are teams that haven't played each other yet. But that's not a thing in the East. Everyone's played each other already. So Dynasty definitely looking like one of the best teams in the region. Them beating the Fusion was a pretty big win for them, and I think it's something that definitely solidifies them as a potential top team in this region. It's very, very competitive right now, and so it's tough to say for sure, but I do think it's pretty much anyone's tournament at this point. I am pretty certain that it really could go any way, could go to anybody. It's definitely not set in stone just yet. The Hangzhou Spark beat the Chengdu Hunters, and the Shanghai Dragons beat the Guangzhou Charge. The 2 favorites in those matches, definitely, though Shanghai struggled quite a bit in that series. They did reverse sweep the Charge, which was pretty concerning to me, but I think the Dragons got better as the week went on, so I'm not really as worried anymore as I was when that match first happened. Spark, pretty easy win over the Hunters. I'm pretty low on the Hunters right now. I don't think they're very good. I think they have a lot of issues with flexibility. I think they're very easy to kind of predict. I think they're a team with a lot of talent, but they just don't have the flexibility to compete in a region where I think all of these teams are incredibly talented. But I'll save my criticism for the Hunters for now. We'll talk about them a little bit more as we get on to the rest of the week. Generally speaking, Thursday kind of went the way that we thought it should go, at least. Dynasty Fusion was definitely up in the air. It's why it was my big pick game, but the Spark beating the Hunters, the Dragons beating the Charge, no real big surprises there. The APAC region was not that surprising if you take out the fact that the Fusion kind of, fell off, which, it's a Fusion. We should have kind of seen that coming. But we move on to Friday. Chengdu Hunters were victorious against the Philadelphia Fusion, which shows me that the Hunters are still a very good team. They're a solid team. They're competitive. The Fusion just did not look that good this week. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was just kind of last week as a type of thing where they just really felt like they were into it. They understood where they were at, and they just kind of were able to get things going and make things work. But for whatever reason, come into the second week, things just didn't feel as good. Maybe the meta shifting a little bit kind of hurt them. I don't really know. I think some of it was just the 4 matches in one weekend. It's a lot. It's exhausting. Yeah, you have a team like Shanghai that played 4 matches this weekend. You also have Chengdu that played 4 matches this weekend. But Shanghai is arguably the best team in the region. They should win. And they didn't look very good at the beginning of the week. When they played the Charge, they looked pretty bad. When they played the Valiant, they looked pretty bad. It really wasn't until the second half of the week that the Dragons kind of got things together. And, in some cases, it may have just been that was kind of when things clicked for them. I just think these teams are tired, man. I think these teams were exhausted. I think some of these teams that had to play 4 matches just were not really feeling it, And Fusion Hunters, both of them had to play 4 matches this weekend. So one of them had to win that game, right? The Hunters lost all 3 other games they played this weekend. The Fusion only won 1 game this weekend, right? The Dragons are the exception because they're the Dragons. They're the best team in the region, and they really should be able to win most of those games. So I think that was probably the biggest thing that kind of impacted this region and a lot of the teams this weekend was that there were teams playing 3 matches, and I think they suffered quite a bit as a result of that. And so that's something I think would be better if they didn't do again in the future, making teams play this many matches because it was kind of rough, I think, there. The Dynasty were pretty dominant against the Charge. Good win for them. Definitely like seeing the Dynasty perform well. We're seeing a lot of kind of good performances out of Smurf. I think he's really getting into form at this point in the season. I thought he struggled a little bit week 1, but I think by now he's kind of feeling a little bit better. He looks a little bit better. And I think that the DPS line is still solid as ever. And I've been pretty impressed by Creative and Vindame so far this season. So good to see wins from them here. Dragons over the Valiant. Close series, 3-2. Valiant had a lot of really close series this week. Definitely kind of... You were just kind of waiting for them to get a win all week. So definitely a team that I think are interesting to watch, and they're definitely exciting. I think that No Hill is definitely doing a great job coaching this roster. I think Dia has been phenomenal all season. He's been a player that I've loved watching to play this season. He just is so exciting, so interesting, so entertaining. So good, definitely a good match there if you didn't see it. That's definitely one worth at least like kind of following along and checking it out because I think the Valiant are a very competitive team this year. They're not going to be like what they were last year. I definitely don't think they're the worst team in this region. So it'll be curious to see kind of how things go for them in the next tournament. See if they kind of can get some more wins under their belt. But I definitely think that they're a team that are on the up right now as the season progresses. First Western Region game of the weekend was the Gladiators beating the Spitfire on Friday. Good win from the Gladiators. Definitely a thing that you needed to see from them. They needed to be a team that got a W. They were struggling so heavily, obviously, after 2 reverse sweeps against them. It was good to see them kind of bounce back, get a pretty convincing win over London Spitfire. It was decently close at times, but I think relatively speaking, the Gladiators looked very good in the series and definitely alleviated a lot of the stress that there was about this team and their performances. Recently, I think they still look like one of the best teams in this region. I think they definitely are a team that are they haven't clicked in the same way that the Shock and the Fuel have, but I definitely think they still have a ton of potential to really cause some damage as the tournament progresses, and as the season progresses in particular. The Toronto Defiant beat the New York Excelsior. Oh wow, what a big surprise. The New York Excelsior are actually garbage, and they're terrible. The Defiant didn't even look all that great. I believe they dropped a map to New York. Neither team really looked that great, but the Defiant just looked better. Obviously, there's all this internal stuff that's been rumored. They didn't play much of Finale or Muse. They played 1 map each, so take that for what you will. But they looked okay. Definitely not a team I expect much out of going into the Kickoff Clash, but maybe they'll do a little something. They're interesting. I don't think they're anything special, but we'll find out, I guess. New York, they're bad, so who cares? Shock beat the Titans, another situation of good team beats bad team. I didn't learn anything from this game. Shock won. They dropped the map by basically trolling, so, it is what it is. Saturday was the only day I got all the APAC games right. It's the only day the Fusion won a game. Spark beat the Charge, Dragons beat the Hunters, Fusion beat the Valiant. Fusion Valiant was actually not that close, which was impressive because the Valiant had been looking very, very good all week, and that felt like a trap game where the Fusion would fall, but they managed the win. This is where I thought the Dragons and the Hunters, where the Dragons and the Spark really kind of solidified themselves as top teams in the region. This is where the Dragons really kind of cleaned up their act against this Hunters roster that had been up and down. Dragons really just kind of dismantled them. It wasn't really that close of a series. And I think the Spark right now look really, really good off the back of ATVI and Shy. Those two are phenomenal. They've done very, very well this season. I think that they have generally been the strongest part of this roster. I think this DPS core is very, very good. This DPS duo is having a very, 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 very big performance week in and week out. I think Gushui, when he is able to kind of be a centerpiece on this tank line, he actually looks pretty good. I'll talk a little more about that on Sunday. But overall, I've been pretty impressed by this Spark roster. I did not think they would be as good as they are now. I definitely didn't think it would be this fast. I thought it would take a little bit longer for them to kind of fit their stride, but they look really good. And I think you gotta give them credit for that. So they're a fun team. Definitely one I'm very, very, very excited about as the season progresses, because this is going to be a very incredible region to watch going forward. I think the biggest upset of the weekend was the London Spitfire taking down the Atlanta Reign. Though maybe it's not really an upset. I don't think the Atlanta Reign look very good right now. I think they look uncomfortable. I don't know what it is, really. They have a very talented roster. They should be better than this, but they just haven't looked very good. This weekend for them was bad. It was a bad weekend for them. They did not perform well in the slightest. And I think that going into a tournament such as this one, I was kind of surprised that nobody picked them because I don't think they look very good. You have teams like the Defiant and the Outlaws and the Justice that I've thought at least have shown like flashes, but I think the Reign for the past 2 weeks have looked bad. I mean, they lost to the Justice. I guess it was 3 weeks ago. I think it was week 2. But then they lost to the Spitfire, and then they got dismantled by the Gladiators on Sunday. So I really don't feel great about this Reign roster. I thought they were the weakest performing team this weekend. They really disappointed me. Or I should say I thought they were the most underwhelming and underperforming team this weekend. Maybe not the worst team this weekend. I think the Guangzhou Chargers are probably the worst team that played this weekend. Or the New York Excelsior, because that NY Excel are actually just garbage. I think they're so bad. And I feel so bad saying that, but they are just not good. But yeah, Spitfire got a big win here. They don't make the tournament, but they put themselves in a pretty good position. 3-3 record on the season. That definitely gives them the ability. You know, when you have the Justice and the Reign sitting at 3-3, the Defiant, the Outlaws, the Mayhem, and the Gladiators all at 4-2. You know, you're only a game behind the third place team. So like they definitely still have a lot of room to improve and room to move up in the standings. I definitely think the Spitfire are going to be potentially a dangerous team going forward, right? They got a win over the Reign, they got a win over the Titans, they got a win over the Uprising, right? They got these wins over these teams that they should beat, plus a win over the Reign, which is pretty good. So they'll be kind of interesting to see going forward how well they're able to kind of bounce back from this tournament where they looked okay but weren't able to get much together. And we'll see kind of what happens with them. But they're definitely an interesting team to kind of look at going forward because I think when the way they play is obviously very different from a lot of other team styles. We saw a little more Reinhardt this weekend from other teams as well, but the Spitfire have been the team running it the most. But they look pretty good, so definitely credit to them for that. Houston Outlaws got a win over the Paris Eternal. It was a reverse sweep. Definitely interesting. Gives me a little bit more hope in the Eternal. Obviously, you would like to see them get that win, get that dub. You kind of really would have started to feel better about this Eternal roster had they managed to get that win. I think they're close. I think they look pretty solid at times. I think they'll have some opportunities to get some wins as we go into the next couple of tournaments. Right, they haven't played the Titans yet. They haven't played the Spitfire yet. They haven't played New York. I don't think they've played Boston yet either. So they have a decently nice schedule going forward. This month was really rough for them because they had to play a lot of really strong teams. But I think over the next kind of month or two, their schedule should open up a little bit. It's with the Gladiators, which isn't easy, but like I said, they play New York. Definitely a winnable game there. They also will then play the Uprising. Once again, winnable game as well. They play Toronto, which is not too out there. London, like the best team that they play is the Gladiators and Toronto, right? Like London is beatable. Boston is beatable. New York is beatable. So Atlanta is beatable. Their schedule next tournament is really not that difficult. So we'll see what happens. They're a very interesting team to kind of watch going forward what happens because their schedule kind of opens up a bit, and we'll kind of see where they are at when they're not having to play really tough opponents all the time. Like the Outlaws are good, obviously, and that's a tough opponent to go up against. They played. I think their schedule this stage was the Shock, the Mayhem, the Outlaws. Did they play the Justice? They had a tough stage. They definitely underperformed, but there's some hope for them to do a little better going forward where their stage is a little bit easier. And so we'll see what happens. But definitely a team that I am gaining some interest in going forward. Final game Saturday, the Florida Mayhem beat the Washington Justice. That was kind of a 50-50 toss-up game. I believed a little bit more in the Justice because I have, I don't know, some kind of Stockholm Syndrome where I still believe in the Justice. I didn't think they looked all that great. I thought it was kind of whatever. It happens. Justice are a very, very hard team to... they're a very hard team to wrap my head around because they struggle so much in so many situations where you just don't really know what to expect from them. So I want to see this team more successful and more consistent because I hate when I see teams with talent that just can't get things together. That is the thing that just annoys me the most, where it's just like, I know this team has potential. I know this team should be able to win games, should be good enough to kind of go all the way, and they just are not doing it consistently enough for me to feel confident in them. So that kind of stinks. Definitely a team that I don't have a ton of faith in this tournament cycle. But also, if they won the whole thing, it wouldn't surprise me. Like, that's the type of team they are. Like, they could win the whole thing, and I wouldn't be surprised. But I also just don't expect it because they just are too inconsistent. So, unfortunate for the Justice. I thought the Mayhem looked pretty good. The Mayhem are actually a team that are surprising me with how good they are. I knew they would be pretty good this season. I kind of felt like right before the season was my point where I realized this Mayhem roster actually had some pretty good potential, and they have looked incredible this season. They definitely feel like that kind of dark horse LA Valiant type team like you saw in 2020, and so I think they're going to be interesting to watch in this tournament and going forward because they've been pretty good, all things considered. Finally, Sunday, Shanghai Dragons beat the Seoul Dynasty. Pretty big win for the Dragons. Definitely cementing themselves as one of the top two teams in the APAC region. It'll be interesting to see where this tournament goes with this APAC region because, like I said, they've played everybody already. So, they lost to the Fusion. They barely beat the Spark. What happens if they meet those two teams again? We'll see. Assuming they win round one, they will have to play one of those teams no matter what. So, that is going to be an exciting thing there. Dynasty, I think, are going to be fine. I don't have a ton of faith in them to win a tournament right now, but I think that they look pretty good, and I think there's still a possibility for them to really kind of make some moves later on. LA Valiant finally get the win over the Chengdu Hunters. I just knew this would be the one. I felt it in my bones that they would win this game, and I was correct. I got the right prediction. I saw somebody complaining in YouTube chat during this game. They were like, my pick'ems! And my reaction was, well, maybe get better and understand that the LA Valiant, or even understand the Chengdu Hunters are not playing that well, and the LA Valiant are playing pretty well. And if they're going to win a game, this is going to be the one. And I felt like it was going to happen. I didn't think there was going to be a win this team this stage. I knew it in my bones. I knew it in my core, at least in this region. And I was right. So there we go. I thought the Valiant looked good. I think Dia looks pretty good. He looks to me like kind of the best piece on this roster right now. And he's been pretty good, pretty consistently. So exciting to see him finally get that big win. And can't wait to see kind of what he does as we move into the Kickoff Clash. We won't be seeing him, but as we move into some of the later tournaments, Midseason Madness, Summer Showdown, we'll be able to see what he brings to the table. Hunger Spark beat the Philadelphia Fusion locking themselves up as the number 1 seed in the APAC region. By the time Sunday rolled around, I had a pretty good feeling the Spark would win the series. It was pretty close, though. So I don't think the Fusion are out. Obviously, they've had close series with the Spark and the Dragons. Obviously, beating the Dragons. Well, actually, technically, that series wasn't close. They beat the Dragons pretty badly and had a close series with the Hangzhou Spark. So you feel decent about the Fusion. They definitely feel like the outside, the team with the most outside shot of winning in this APAC Eastern Region tournament. But I think, generally speaking, they still look pretty good. And I think that over time, they should only get better. And so that is what I'm most excited about seeing going forward, is how this team kind of pieces everything together and how they look going forward. The Dallas Fuel were victorious over the Boston Uprising. No surprise there. Good team plays bad team. Good team wins. There you go. Final match of the weekend was the Atlanta Reign versus the LA Gladiators. This was a big pick game for me. And wow, was it not a good match for the Atlanta Reign. The LA Gladiators destroyed them. It was not close. The LA Gladiators dominated this team, dominated this match. And so we're going to kind of see what happens going forward. But definitely a lot of concern about the Reign. I want to see how they perform in this Kickoff Clash. They get to play the Mayhem, a team they have played before and beaten. So you would think that would make you feel pretty good, but we'll see what happens. Who knows what goes on in this region. And with the Reign going forward, because there's some really good teams here, and if the Reign can't keep up, they are going to fall behind pretty badly and pretty quickly. So those are all the matches from last weekend. Let me pull up the brackets for the different tournaments. You can see the Overwatch League's little graphic here. Here's the East region. You can see we have the number 1 seed, Hangzhou Spark. They'll be taking on the number 4 seeded Philadelphia Fusion. And then the Shanghai Dragons are the 2 seed taking on the Seoul Dynasty. So a rematch of both of their Sunday matches. So we kind of have a little bit of an idea what happened, right? Dragons won pretty dominantly. Spark and Fusion was very close. So I think it'll be an interesting series and a tournament to see what happens here. The irony is that in the event that the Spark and the Dragons win, what we are left with is the Fusion and the Dynasty competing for a chance to, get a shot at the finals. And the Fusion and the Dynasty are arguably the 2 most underperforming teams in tournaments over the past 2 seasons, where they have great stages and then they just don't go anywhere with it. And that's what we're looking at with both of these teams. It is just, you can't make these storylines any better. They have to play each other. That's so funny. So funny. So we'll see what happens there. This, I think, is going to be a really great tournament because it's 4 teams, but who knows who's going to win. It feels so close. It feels so up in the air. It doesn't really feel like there's enough parity between these teams, or I guess there is parity between these teams. There's not a huge gap between them. I always forget what parity means sometimes. I know it's something along there. Anyway, there's a lot of parity between these teams. And so they're very, very close together. And so I think that will benefit the viewer because we get a nice tournament of some really good teams. So that's your East Region tournament and your East Region bracket. And let's take a look at our Western Region bracket. The San Francisco Shock chose the Washington Justice, so they'll be facing off. And then the winner of that series plays the winner of the Florida Mayhem versus the Atlanta Reign series. The Dallas Fuel chose the Toronto Defiant, so they'll face off. And the winner of that series plays the LA Gladiators, who chose the Houston Outlaws. The winner of that series will be who the winner of the Fuel Defiant series plays. To me, there's a very large amount of, or I should say there is not a lot of parity in this region. I think there's a huge gap between a lot of these teams. To me, it's really like a 3-horse race between the Shock, the Fuel, and the Gladiators. Maybe the Mayhem are a dark horse. I don't believe in the Reign. I don't really believe in the Defiant, the Outlaws, or the Mayhem. Justice as well, I don't really have much of a belief in. I think of all of those lower level teams, like outside of those top 3, genuinely, I think the Justice have the best chance at doing something about it, because I think that they just have that very bizarre, like, if they get playoff Decay, if they get, Decay at his best and he is on a hard carry mode, this Justice team could be deadly and could be unstoppable. They are just that good. But I don't know if we're actually going to see that version of the Justice, who we haven't really seen much of them this season. But it's an interesting looking tournament. I definitely am excited to see in-person tournament. Will be really cool to see kind of fans for the entire tournament. I think there's going to be some of the best games of the season. Dallas fans always go hard, so definitely exciting to see that. Definitely ready for all of that. So those are my thoughts of what happened this past weekend. We won't take a look at the standings because, they're not really that important right now. The bracket kind of fills that for us. So that's where we're going to end this one. Hope you all enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing for more like it in the future. Comment down below your thoughts on this Kickoff Clash bracket, whether it be the East or the West one. Love to hear from you. That's going to be all from me for today. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.